Well, I'm Steve Canton from Fort Myers, Florida. Been there since 1988. Been involved with the sport of boxing most all of my life. Trainer, manager, cut man, promoter, a little bit of everything. And I've been having a good time all these years and made a lot of friends, traveled the world. And that's basically, I was inducted into the inaugural class of the Boxing Hall of Fame in Florida in 2009. The inspiration for the book, Tributes, Memories, and Observations of Sweet Science, was based on many historians throughout the years badgering me in a way to write a book based on the experiences of my travels within the sport and the people that I've met. And finally it came to fruition a few months back in July of 2013 when Don Cogswell, boxing historian, author, and inductee of the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame, visited and said, "You need to write the book." And because of him and designing the cover of the book and so forth, the book was done. The book that I wrote is basically a compilation of short stories, many different fighters and fighting people, boxers and people involved in the sport who have done great deeds in and out of sport. Many of them are lesser known in the sport and did great deeds outside the sport. Others are well known, but I had a good close-up human interest angle and tributes to them. And that's basically what the book is consisting of, 37 chapters. At the end of the book, for those people who are historians or have more questions, they can go and look up the actual records, ring records, of the people that we wrote about within the book. There are several chapters in the book, of course, as we said, 37 chapters. Within that are a few stories that really bear mentioning. One, we talk about Rudell Stitch, who was a great fighter back in the 1950s, on the verge of stardom when he died saving the life of a man in the river. Long forgotten, his memory has been resurrected, and now he's a member of the Kentucky Hall of Fame, and they did a big mural downtown celebrating his memory and bringing that back, which I totally enjoyed. There are other books or stories within the book, such as Emanuel Stewart, who I was close friends with for over 40 years, and though he's been written about and discussed by many people throughout the years, we have done kind of a unique story about him on many of the stuff that are unknown to the public and things that we did and rare pictures of him being within the book that are there. There are books about the ghost of Clyde Mudgett, who is an interesting story, who inhabited Clancy's gym in Minneapolis. There's so many, there's things about my pet peeves in boxing, which talks about some of the problems today that's wrong with the sport, such as the smaller number of rounds, not the 15-round fights, the day before weigh-ins, many of these things. So there's basically a mixture of informational articles, discussions of the culture of boxing, and tributes to some great people. Joey Souza, the great cut man in boxing, was a teammate of mine in the Air Force way back as a fighter, developed into a great cut man. And it's a very close-up story that we've got on him. So there's so much in there for many people throughout life, whether they be a sport fan, boxing fan, or just life in general. There's a chapter about Danny London, a fighter back in the 1930s. Became a fighter because he was a deaf mute. Grew up and he was having all kinds of problems growing up with all the ridicule and no friends. Wandered into a boxing ring, did a good job as an amateur fighter, started getting a following. He had newfound friends now, he was so happy. One day, one of his last amateur fights, he was hit in the head with a punch. He heard the bell ring, first sound he heard in his life. Goes back to the corner yelling at his trainer. He can now hear. Trainer didn't know what he's doing. Pushed him out in the next round, and he's listening to the great sounds that he never heard in his life, and he said somehow he managed to win the fight. Later on, he had a long, great professional career, and he ended up training fighters throughout the rest of the many years, and he always lamented the fact that years later he wished he could remember the guy who hit him in the head so he could properly thank him for hitting him in the head so he can regain his speech and his hearing. The book can be purchased right on my website, sjcboxing.com. There is a link to order the book, and I'll sign the book to you and send it right out. One thing too, the foreword is by Al Bernstein, who did a great job, and I really appreciate that. Fabulous testimonials that I thoroughly appreciate. Harold Letterman, Roy Jones Jr., Dan Kuko from Ibro, and Bob Alexander, the Hall of Fame ring announcer. So many great book reviews that I appreciate. Enjoy the book, order the book. You won't be disappointed.